that is the craziest shit I've ever heard. I'm never doing that.
Yes.
Like, I really know that I don't want to do that. It was
Feels
a clear
impossible.
no. It does. And then it's the thing of going, I couldn't imagine spending more time with my kids. What I was doing outside those 6 hours a day was plenty.
Yes.
But what was really funny was obviously the events of the last couple of years. I just came to this realisation that it would be appropriate to ask the kids their opinion about what was going on for them. And as you know, that child that she supported the birth of was the one that was the catalyst for us homeschooling, because he's in prep and we get to term 4 and he goes, I'm not going back. And it was not this thing where you're arguing with a 5-year-old to say, oh no, you're going back. It was just emphatic, and there was no wiggle room, and the energy of what he had was so comprehensively whole. That was it. Like, it was just I just thought, oh crap, like I have no option but to homeschool this kid. He's not going back. Hello, Quanta folks, and welcome to this special podcast. Splinter Faction is what we're going to call it, from Faark The Shoulds. Welcome to our little sub-podcast called Alchemising Education. I have been wanting to do this for so long, and I'm so excited to be bringing this conversation to you under the Faark The Shoulds banner, of course, because the should farking does, really have to do with all sorts of things, but particularly education. So welcome to the first episode of Alchemising Education. I am Jodi from QuantiMama, and I am so delighted to introduce you to one of my favourite people, Curious Quinn, who has many questions because she's so curious. Welcome, Quinn.
Oh my gosh, this is a very exciting moment. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be exciting.
Well, we're having each other, aren't we? So.
We are, yeah, totally. We're just going to alchemise the
Faark.
The Faark out of this one.
The Faark out of it. Because really, education really needs to be alchemised.
Oh,
and
definitely.
I think that part of this conversation is going to be so useful for people is to I guess give them an idea about how we came to this point of view, because we're pretty vanilla, middle class people, aren't we?
Oh my Lord, I would never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd be in this position.
Yeah.
I definitely I grew up with 2 teachers. My parents were both teachers.
I did not know that. That's so interesting.
There you go. And I remember from the very beginning when I went to put my second born into school and trying to decide on what age I send them in. And, you know, the comments were really strong around age and why you do it and how you do it and the benefits to it. And I was really, even at that time, kind of going, oh, I just don't agree. I just, and I really had to tussle with that one. And I went against what my mother in particular recommended me to do. So I guess I was already challenging things back then, and the decision that we made was the right one at the time. So yeah, interesting.
Which was that to hold one of your kids back from starting school early?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we held him back, and the thought was, if you hold him back, then he's going to get bored and he's going to be troublesome.
Yeah.
That was
interesting, isn't it?
He was. Yeah. If there's nothing worse than a bored child in class because they just become disruptive.
Yeah.
So we were enormously challenged by that because we were not, and to this day I still get little reminders about how we went against the teacher's decision in the family. So yeah, very interesting. But so
you're a bit of a quiet achiever with that kind of stuff, because I think you do a great job of looking like someone who toes the line, and then just every so often there's a little bit of curiosity comes out, which I just love, and then you'll actually take action on that. And I mean, McGill and I have discussed this with a few people about the fact that we were drinking champagne when our 4th went to school. I just think school is just like the greatest blessing ever.
Totally. Oh, yes.
And then remote learning happened, and I was like, oh my God, is that what they're doing? And then seeing the kids actually not very happy at home, it was like, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't.
And, once we went down that pathway and we started talking to people and we started really noticing the fact that parents are the greatest obstacle in their children's education in terms of adjusting how children learn and being flexible, it became really apparent that the kids were completely fine and they're not disruptive and they're not bored. They're actually just trying to communicate that the environment is not fit for purpose.
Correct.
And so this idea around alchemising education really started to grow some legs about the fact that I literally had this conversation with an ex-teacher the other day about the fact that the whole system needs to be taken down, not even brick by brick, probably a lot faster than that, because the kids are quite apparently not enjoying it. It's not fit for purpose.
A lot of kids are not happy in it, and you can't apply a one size fits all. We're all individuals, and you think about it even in the workplace. There's different jobs for different people in the workplace.
Yeah.
For a reason,
Yeah.
because we've got certain personalities
Yeah.
and certain needs. So
Yeah.
we can't all do the same job, which is really, I guess, what we're expecting within the education system
Yes.
is that all kids are trained and taught exactly the same way.
Yes.
And then we expect them to be happy.
Yes.
I mean,
so it's a bit like being at a wedding and putting all your bridesmaids in the same dress, irrespective of body shape and comfort level.
I was talking with my daughter about this recently. She said, Mum, what happens if the dress doesn't suit somebody? Like, do they have to wear that same dress? I said, well, a bride does generally get the choice, but if they're sensible about it, they will actually look at the size and the shape and decide on what's going to work best.
That's
Maybe
right.
the same colour might be okay.
Yeah.
But, let's make sure they all feel comfortable and enjoy what they're wearing.
I always thought that was the greatest bridezilla move, was to put your best friends in the same dress so that they all look all different degrees of terrible and feel terrible about themselves.
I know.
It's almost like making the princess shine even more. And I'm like, that's a really alcoholic move.
Yeah, maybe that was the plan. It's like, hey, guys, it's all about me anyway.
Exactly. That's right. Everyone's looking at me. But I do think there's a lot of that. And so I think that these conversations can be really interesting because I don't want to be prescriptive about how to educate, but I do think people need to get back into their hearts and make decisions from that viewpoint and acknowledge where the momentum or desire for a certain way to say have their children educated, is that coming from their own learning and programming and limitations? Is it reflected in society? One of the most common questions that is bandied around people who are interested in homeschooling is, how do children socialise? And it's just like, it's such a benign question, because kids will socialise if they want to socialise. They're humans, just like humans socialise. We don't look at a new job and go, I don't know those people. How will I socialise?
But how many kids even in the system are happy socialising in that environment anyway? How many of them are struggling? Struggling with social connections anyway. So what makes that system any better than being an environment where they actually can pick and choose who they socialise with, what activities they want to do? Do they feel like it today? Are they prepared to stand up and say, I don't like that, you know? So we're not saying that the ones who are there are happy socialising anyway. We have to challenge that one.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I just think that school's such a neat package. It's a bit like a painkiller, where you don't examine where the pain's coming from. You're not curious about, what environmental factors are creating the pain. You just literally take a painkiller for it, and it's a
it hits
coverall.
everywhere.
Correct. And it narcotises us to being interested in any of the nuances that could be adjusted for a richer experience, And I do think that the kids are starting to call bullshit on it.
Yeah, I
because the incidence of mental health, the incidence of kids acting out, and I'm using obviously parentheses with that, but you know, kids acting out, they're not acting out. They're trying to get some kind of reaction or traction about the fact that where they are is not fit for purpose, you know. They're not even looking for a massive change. They're just looking for some kind of acknowledgement that it is not meeting their needs at the moment.
Not working for them.
Yeah.
And they're getting shut down because if they don't fit the system, then they're being labelled that there's something wrong with them.
Yes.
That they can't focus, or that they've lost, you know, any desire to be there, or, you know, whether that be then depression, or they're just, you know, I mean, as it is, we know that society is so confusing for teenagers and for young children to try and find themselves. And yet what they're being asked to do is to fit into a box and to fit into a one-size-fits-all. And it just doesn't work that way.
Well, the curious thing about this, pun intended, is that I don't even think kids need to find themselves. I think they're whole already.
Yes.
And they have a sense of that. And when they bring their true self out, society says, oh, not that. And so then we homogenise them by putting them into essentially these one-size-fits-all camps for 13 years and say, well, this is how you get along in society. This is how you become a good, upstanding citizen. And we negate all the individual aspects that are their own brilliance. That could be taking us different places. And so as a consequence, they have to be taught then a framework for finding themselves within that narrow parameter so that it fits what society needs. And I'm not saying we allow the serial killers to evolve into serial killers. However, I do suspect that if we gave kids more credit for their individual aspects, we would probably reap the rewards of that and they would be happier.
Totally. Being able to find what lights them up.
Yeah.
Rather than being told what they have to learn about.
Yeah. That's been our experience. I mean, I know you know this, so obviously I'm really doing this for the benefit of those joining us, Quanta folks out there. But, you know, like I always talk about the fact that McGill and I are born-again homeschoolers, you know, because when my first experience of real homeschooling was my doula that supported us for Quanta Kid 4's birth, and she was extraordinary, and she was just like this earth mother, birth mother, just so present with me, such a beautiful, talented woman for what she was doing. She was perfect for being a doula, and she's now a midwife, thank goodness, because more people benefit, more babies benefit. Anyway, the whole thing was she had 3 kids and she homeschooled, and I was like, that is the craziest shit I've ever heard. I'm never doing that. Like, I really know that I don't want to do that. It was a clear
impossible.
No. It does. And then it's the thing of going, I couldn't imagine spending more time with my kids. What I was doing outside those 6 hours a day was plenty. But what was really funny was obviously the events of the last couple of years. I just came to this realisation that it would be appropriate to ask the kids their opinion about what was going on for them. And as you know, that child that she supported the birth of was the one that was the catalyst for us homeschooling, because he's in prep and we get to term 4 and he goes, I'm not going back. And it was not this thing where you're arguing with a 5-year-old to say, oh, no, you're going back. It was just emphatic, and there was no wiggle room, and the energy of what he had was so comprehensively whole. That was it. Like, it was just I just thought, oh, crap, like I have no option but to homeschool this kid. He's not going back. And, you know, to have forced him back would have been going against everything that is, you know, in the purview of a nurturing parent. It just would have felt completely out of alignment. So then it's like, well, why bother, you know, driving the highway for any kids? You may as well just give them all the option to stay home, and then suddenly we're home, and that's what we're doing now, you know. But it's been the greatest gift, you know.
Absolutely the greatest gift. I'd like to perhaps just also let the listeners know that I have one who's homeschooled and one who's not homeschooled. So I think the value of listening to the individual's needs is so critical, because I guess we need to demonstrate the skills that we wish for them in their future. So if we were to ignore their requirements, and so for your youngest to suddenly go, well, you've just got to go. I don't care. I'm not having any of you at home.
Yeah.
We'd be ignoring him in terms of his needs. So then at what point does he learn to listen to other people's needs?
Yes, correct.
So at some point in time, we need to demonstrate what we want for them. Now, obviously, schools are very big ticket items that you're giving the needs met for him. But, I can see the value of listening to their individual needs. So my oldest is still at school, but was at the end of the school journey. Yeah. So the thought of, for her, getting out of the system was really scary because she's a structured kid who loves structure, loves to know what's expected, loves to know what's the milestones, what am I reaching for, what's expected of me. So for her to come out of the school system, especially at the other end, was not going to be a possibility for her. However, my other one was like, and again, through the whole, experience of COVID and lockdowns and remote learning, we saw, as you did, just what wasn't working for him. And we saw his learning styles. Yes. And we recognised that he was pretty quick to pick things up. Yes. And I think we're not the stereotypical parents. This is what's really interesting because then when we approach the school to say, well, we're actually pulling him out and homeschooling, it was like, oh my God, really? Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, because that's what he's asking for. So we're listening to his needs, and we basically treated it as, well, you can always go back. Yeah. If it's not working, you can go back. Yeah. And 6 months down the track when I asked him, so what do you reckon? Do you want to go back? Hell no. Yeah. Hell no. Yeah. Because he realised that for him, sitting in class day in, day out was just so boring. And, my mother was right. You don't want a bored student. Well, then what's wrong with the system that we're not able to keep them all engaged? Yes. Why can't we keep them all engaged? Well, there's a reason for that. Yes. Because we expect to teach them all the same way. Yes. And that they all can toe the line and can all do all the requirements in the same way. And they're all individuals. And gosh, I feel sorry for those teachers. Those teachers having to try and factor in, 20-odd students and their individual needs and their individual interests is just crazy to put that expectation on them.
Well, the whole system is under pressure because no one's thriving. Yeah, they're just all there with a gun to their head. And that's why I'm saying I don't think schools all need to be shut down, but there needs to be a reimagining.
There needs to be some flexibility, and maybe some schools have a particular approach, other schools have a particular approach. I guess they're trying to do that in the upper years with, different VCE, VCAL, all the different sort of styles. So the different avenues when you're at the later end, but they don't do it in the younger years. So they can see that the upper end, obviously, the pressure is really high, and trying to keep them engaged requires to have different avenues. So, but we should be, perhaps there's an opportunity to do that at the younger years with different schools with different approaches.
But I wonder if you could do primary school and it's, more like 2-3 days a week.
Correct.
So something that allows for far more playtime. And I'm so excited to continue the conversation because I think that what happened for us, and this might be a suggestion for parents, curious parents out there that are listening, is that to have the conversation with your kids and not necessarily take it as a complete answer, because kids need to learn to trust that they'll be heard. Yes. Now, if a kid has been unhappy for a while and is learning just to go with the flow or go with the majority, then they won't have that established trust.
That's right.
But one of the things that was so illuminating for us is that our experience was once our kids came out of school, then they started telling us what had been happening and all the little things that had felt unjust to them. Little things like in primary school they hadn't finished their work and so they were kept in at lunchtime, which to them felt like a punishment, and to me sounded a lot like a punishment for something that perhaps was just TikTok related. It was just the timing of it hadn't worked for them. And so those little traumas then became associated with learning. And so then those little learning traumas then became a narrative for what they thought about themselves, which was, were they smart or were they not? Obviously, they felt like they were dumb because they couldn't do things in a certain time frame. So the requirement to build up confidence has taken a lot longer than anticipated. And so I'm really interested in talking about that kind of stuff as well, because all of this alchemising education is about creating lifelong learners that just keep growing. And that's what we are. Like we're people that just keep learning new things, don't we?
And celebrating those learnings, you know, and knowing that life is forever learning. You know, and it doesn't have to be in a formal sense. You know, it can be, some of my greatest lessons have been beyond the school sort of setting. So why is there so much of an emphasis on school being the main foundation for our success? Lots of learning, and we want them to love learning, and most kids and most people love learning.
That's right.
So we want to create the environment that enables them to know that that's a learning experience, regardless of where you are. And I must say, I know it can be overwhelming to feel like you're the one responsible for the teaching of your children. But it can be so satisfying when we're the ones that are helping them learn.
That's right.
And rather than sort of, you know, and I was very guilty of palming them off to the system because I thought, I can't do that, and they're much better qualified and they know what they're doing. But, you know, and I know certainly, you know, we do that in a lot of parts of our life. We give them over to the experts, or give our you know, we give things over to what we call our experts. But we are that in our children's lives, and we know them better than anyone. I think the biggest challenge for many families and even children is comparison. Comparing to other parents, or kids comparing to other kids. And then that takes all of us away from our own source and our own internal knowing. So, you know, I think there's a lot of challenges there, but there's a lot of gains when we take ourselves on that journey. And I think to see our kids flourish within our own environment is, you know, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And we have a choice then. We have a choice.
We get what we do is we get to have a say, but more than that, the kids get to have a say. And they're the two main voices that I see that are not being represented at the table at the moment because of the efficiencies of education. So this is not going to be a hit job on the school system, but I think what we're interested in doing is having conversations that just speak to the what's the word for it? Like just that feeling of uncenteredness or unanchoring that's within parents at the moment. There are a lot of parents that when they find a quiet moment will admit that this is happening in their own household. That within that household this model is not addressing those needs, or it's leaving a slightly bitter taste in the mouth. And it might only be a very small bitter, but the point is that it can be corrosive over time. So let's continue these conversations. This has been a great start.
There's a lot. There's a lot that we can. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and I think there's a lot of questions that we don't have to have always the answers for, but we just definitely need to start asking those questions of ourselves and really tuning into our kids and what they need. What are they asking for? What do they need? And then taking the time to just listen to that.
What a beautiful way to finish. Nice one, Quinny.
Wait for more.
Wait for more.
Wait for more.
Until next time.
Absolutely looking forward to it.
All right, beautiful Quanta folks. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute delight. Curious Quinn, we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Definitely.
And be well, beautiful people.
Thank you.
See you.